Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery Podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror in film, in literature, and in popular culture. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Bruce Markison, and as always, I'm joined by producer and co host Tracy Asteria. Tracy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bruce. How are you today?
Very good. I know you've been really busy. You have been working on a new logo for us that actually is already up. You're still doing some tinkering with us with that. Tell us about this new logo. I love it.
So this new logo, it is really well suited for the podcast. It's nice and eerie looking. And it's really, really exciting because it kind of gives a nice brand to this podcast. And we're looking forward to using it.
Yeah, it really fits in with our plan. Tracy has already been laying the groundwork for us to move our shows to YouTube. That's going to be done on a gradual basis, but Tracy has already begun that project. Tell us a little bit more about that, Tracy.
So, right now, all of the podcasts that we have done already, I'm just in the process of revamping the audio and moving it to more of a visual aspect. So, we'll be able to have a couple of visual diagrams to look at as the audio podcast plays. And you'll be able to watch that on the big screen or on your phone just through the YouTube app, which I think is going to be great. Open up a brand new audience of people who are just hardcore YouTube users. But it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. It's a lot of fun, and eventually, hopefully, we can actually start with real live video as well.
That's great. We're really looking forward to that. Now, just to clarify, we're still going to be on Podbean, Spotify, Samsung, iHeartRadio, among other platforms. So YouTube isn't going to replace those. It's going to be an addition to. And as you say, a lot of people do like to go to YouTube automatically. And hopefully this will increase some exposure for us and get us connected to some of the horror and sci-fi fans that are out there. Well, Tracy,
Absolutely.
for this week's show, we are going to spend most of our time with a repeat guest. You're going to be introducing him and leading much of the interview. So tell everybody about who we've got on now for a second time.
Okay, so we have Ansel Faraj, who is with us today, and he was last with us on the Ghostly Gallery podcast for episode number 10. Well, he was with us the first time. We discussed in great detail Ansel's beginnings in the horror genre. We talked about a lot of Dark Shadows material and a few films of his, including Dr. Mabusa and Loon Lake. So, if any of our listeners haven't had a chance to hear that episode, please go ahead and listen to that one and get to know Ansel a little bit better. So, let's just get right into this. Welcome, Ansel. How are you doing today?
Thanks, guys, for having me. I'm doing good.
That is awesome. We've got a lot of questions lined up for you. The first thing I really want to chat about is the 2023 release of your film called Todd Tarantula. The film stars Ethan Walker as the lead role, Todd Tarantula, David Selby as Lucifer Gray, and Nathan Wilson as, I believe it was Barracuda.
Yes,
And
it was.
you
Yeah.
had so many excellent supporting cast members. I recently watched that movie and it was such a great storyline. Can you just give us a little chat about your movie and tell us all about it?
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the movie. It's a film that I had. It took me 12 years to finally make. We had many false starts and finances falling apart and whatnot, and then ultimately, after the pandemic, I said I'm going to make this film, and I ended up paying for it entirely myself out of pocket. It
Hmm.
is best described as a quote a mystery of psychedelic proportions. It's about a young punk named Todd Tarantula, whose motorbike goes missing, and he has this vision of his father murdered, and that leads him down a rabbit hole of Los Angeles urban mythology and an increasingly strange, surreal conspiracy surrounding his family and himself. And it was something that I I had always wanted to make as a teenager and as a young man. Um, and I always wanted it to feel like a cartoon come to life or a graphic novel come to life. So we
Right.
shot it live action, but then in post production, it was rotoscoped to give it this sort of graphic novel feel to it. And it it was. I'm very happy that the movie exists and that I don't have to wonder or think about it ever again because it took a lot to. There was many times I'm like, this movie will never get made. Um, and thankfully it has, and it's out there. It's streaming on Tubi. It's streaming on a couple other platforms now, I believe, and it's available
Hmm.
on Blu-ray, which I highly encourage because physical media is something that streamers can't take away from you. And as an independent filmmaker,
Exactly.
it helps support me a little bit more.
No, that's right. I know there's nothing better than actually having an actual physical copy in your hands. It's just, I think the quality is excellent, and it is. There's extra bonus features on the DVD copy as well, is it not?
There's a bunch of special features. We've got interviews with David Selby, with myself, with uh, Nathan Wilson, Emma West. There's behind the scenes photos. There's a whole little featurette on how we did some of the stunts. Um, there's a lot on there. There's a bonus film on there, a short film, and yeah, it's a it's on sale on Amazon, so you can go and click it and add it to your cart, and it'll be delivered the next day.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. Oh, that's amazing. So, can you tell us what inspired you to write such a cool story? Like, it's very, very trippy. I can't even tell you how much I enjoyed it. It just has so many different aspects. Like, there was time travel, mythology, and some pretty cool futuristic technology scenes. Um, what? How did you ever come up with a story like that?
I mean, you know, I'm from Los Angeles, and LA is a very strange town when you really start to dig into it. And we do have a lot of urban myths, I guess you would call them. And
Mhm.
yeah, I always kind of fascinated by that and sort of the geography of LA and how LA began. So there's a lot of LA history in there.
Right.
And it's just, I mean, I don't know. I was 17 or 18 when I started thinking about it. It started out as like a short film, you could call it, of
Mhm.
Todd, this punk on a motorcycle, trapped in Westwood Village, which is the sort of college town where UCLA is based in
Right.
LA. And he's sort of trapped in a sense of like Louis Buñuel's film The Exterminating Angel. He can't get out of Westwood, and Lucifer Gray is like sitting on a bus bench, and they keep having this metaphysical discussion, and then finally his friend Barracuda drove in and rescued him and got him out of Westwood. A very sort of surreal, abstract little black and white short. And we didn't do that because then I kept writing and thinking about, well, what if Lucifer took Todd to hell, but it was a version of the Venice Boardwalk, and I am from Venice particularly, and
Okay.
like all the demons are Hell's Angels motorcycle riders because you know the Hell's Angels and the name and the Hell's Angels from Venice, and you know the movie The Wild Angels with Peter Fonda, and yeah, I don't know. I kept thinking I have an overactive imagination, and I just kept thinking at that point in my life, what's a movie that I would want to see,
Mhm.
and yeah, and it kept building and evolving, and I ended up with what we have. That's a
Oh my
very
gosh.
jackassy way of describing it, but that's what happened.
Oh, but when I first turned the movie on, it it was such a cool way. Like, it was filmed in such a cool manner. I don't think I've ever seen a movie quite like that before. Just the
Thank you.
visual and the color. I can't tell you how much I loved it. David Selby's performance was outstanding. Um, did he give you any of his thoughts on what it was like to portray such a unique character? Because he played a pretty cool character in Lucifer. He did a great job.
He won actually Best Supporting Actor at the Hollywood Real Independent Film Festival here, where the film sort of debuted. Um, his thoughts? No, he was David is such a nice guy and so down to earth and such a humanitarian. So he was very he was I don't want to say frightened, but he was very nervous about the character. And
Right.
can we do? Is there something that's like some good in him, and is there something where he can help humanity? And I'm like, no, David. He's like he's he's not the devil, but like his name is an indication of he's not a good guy. And but things are going to happen in the story that will bring about something good, but I need you to be seductively evil. And he kind of, I was at lunch with him and his wife Chip, who is also super nice and a very big supporter of me. And he I mean, he didn't not want to do the film. He was just trying to wrap his mind around how to get into this guy's skin. And I think, you know, it's a very dark role. And uh, so as an actor, having to go down those go into those places to bring something like that to life, and he was apprehensive but up for the challenge. And then his wife Chip said, David, this is one of the best roles you'll ever play. This role comes out of the Bible, and quit hemming and hawing. You're not going to play the father character, because he was considering that. And what if I play both? And I'm like, well, that's not going to really work. But she goes, just do it. You know how to play this character. And he goes, oh, okay. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, he sent me a photo of him in the outfit, and I found him, and I was like, well, I always knew that you would, David. And so no, he had fun, because then he could kind of let loose and go. Like, I told him, I want you to chew the scenery and then some. You have free reign with this guy. The character demands it.
Mhm.
And so yeah, he had fun. Yeah.
Uh,
David is always up to kind of have a challenge, and he always wants to do a good job. And I think that was probably the biggest thing. He did not want to do a good job. He was afraid that playing such a bad character that you know it's a task for any actor. And but no, he had loads of fun. I mean,
oh my gosh, yeah. Well,
Ansel, I think that's really interesting. Here's an accomplished actor. David Selby has been around since the 1960s. He's got a great reputation, but he's not so overconfident. He's not so
no
cocky that he
actor is
thinks,
confident. No actor is
okay.
confident, no matter how long they've worked or whom they've worked with. I mean, the first actor I ever worked with, and actually the actor that I wrote Lucifer Gray for years and years and years ago, Lyndon Childs, he worked with Alfred Hitchcock and Marnie. He was on the first episode of The Munsters. He was on The Twilight Zone. He was on, I mean, every single show in the golden age of television, all the way, up to Golden Girls, was on it. He worked with Roger Corman. He did everything.
Mm.
Alain Delon kicked him in the face on Texas Across the River with Dean Martin. He was in that. He did it. Universal was grooming him to be a major player in the '60s. He too was like, I need direction. I need to know, like, is this right? Am I doing this right? Is this, and I was really a kid when I was directing him, and it just comes down to actors need direction. It doesn't matter who they are, what they've done, or what they're working on. All actors need guidance because they don't know. They're in their own little bubble of this is the role that I'm playing and the lines that I have to say, but I don't know what is, I sort of have an understanding of what the story is and what quote unquote the world around me is going to look like, but I don't know what the final result is going to be. And I'm doing, little bits and moments that are going to be pieced together. And I don't know which moments those will be, in the final edit. It's not stage where they get to go and they get to live the character and live the story from beginning to end in a continuous experience. It's snippets and it's, here I am on a blue screen in 1850 and this, it could be anything. So, actors in film and on stage, but in film particularly, yeah, they always uh, want direction and guidance. Yeah.
Oh, wow. The lead character that played Todd Tarantula is played by an up and coming actor. His name is Ethan Walker. How did you come across Ethan, and what were his thoughts on the story and the character? Was this his first role?
This was his first film. We had 600 actors auditioned. Like, I mean, there was a larger number that submitted for the role, but
Hmm.
600 read for the character, and then it boiled down to five, and then it boiled down to three, and then um, he got the part, and he got it because he didn't play it sort of like a grunt, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. There was something smarmy and uh, forgive my language, but there was an air of bullshit to him, and that would be right for the character because Todd is he's like that.
Right.
And yeah, it was his first film, and yeah, I'll kind of keep it at that.
Oh, interesting. He was a good choice. He played the part really well. He played the part really, really well.
He
So,
he yeah he what should I say? Yes, direction. He needs to learn to take a little more direction, but um, he did fulfill what was needed of the character.
oh wow. And you had an excellent supporting cast. Like, you know, all of the other actors that you had were they did an amazing job too.
Yeah.
Just really, really great. And now you have another upcoming film that's coming that you're currently working on. It's called The Great Nick D. Did you want to? Are you able to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Um, it is not genre. It's a comedy about a washed up porn star who's now a Venice Beach nobody, Nick D, and he goes on this odyssey to restart his mainstream acting career in order to win back the girl that his long lost girlfriend, who's now sort of the equivalent of Meryl Streep. And it's yeah, it's not a horror film. It's not genre, but I
Mhm.
don't always work in genre. I've done a love story back in 2018 film. I'm very proud of Will and Liz.
Right.
I've done I work outside of horror, but this is a film that Nathan Wilson and I have been discussing for a decade, and it was going to be a series at one point, and then we just again like with Todd Tarantula, you just keep writing because you have all
Mhm.
these ideas and how did this guy end up in the position that he's in, and what does he want out of life, and what's he's such a kooky oddball character. Well, what about the rest of the people that he knows, and what does he do, and so just you keep writing and thinking up ideas and stuff, and so yeah, it's a bit of an epic, and we have a really great cast in that one. Nathan Wilson, my regular collaborator, he plays Nick D.
Right.
David Selby plays his father. Catherine Lee Scott is she's kind of an antagonist in the film. You have Olan Jones, who's been in Tim Burton's work. She has a very funny role. Um, Lisa Richards is in it in a comedic supporting role. Uh, Director Sam Irvin, who did Elvira's Haunted Hills, and he's recently has a book out about Frankenstein: The True Story.
Oh wow.
He's a very good friend. He has a role in the film. It's his acting debut, and we crack up about that. He's a director. He's a film director. But I'm like, I need you to. I called him up. The Fablemans had just come out, and David Lynch is in The Fablemans as John Ford. Apparently, I haven't seen the film, but I know that David Lynch appears. So I called up Sam. I'm like, Sam, I need you to be my David Lynch in this movie. He laughed about that and was only too happy. And we have Lara Parker in her final film role, or acting role, really. She's in the film, and she's not obviously Angelique, but I kind of don't want to spoil anything. And
Right.
Who else is in it? Douglas Eames, who is the mysterious father in Todd Tarantula. He has the total opposite kind of a role in Nick D as Aldo, the silent Harpo Marx-esque sidekick to Nick D, who only communicates by, well, he never says a word, but he eats corn nuts, and so the way that he crunches his corn nuts is how he communicates to Nick. And there's like 40 actors. It's a very big film.
Oh my gosh.
We were luckily under the independent contracts, so during the strikes we were able to continue. We did not
Right.
have to shut down, which was very nice. And
Yeah.
we shot from April till September, and
Oh
the beginning
wow.
of April, before even the strikes began, we were shooting. And yeah, I it's fun. You'll be seeing the Dark Shadows cast dancing, and we have a musical number in there, and it's a very different film for all of them. It's a nice little refresher for me, and I mean, yeah, I could talk for hours. So throw questions at me, and I'll be happy to answer whatever you would like to know about the movie.
Oh my gosh. So you just finished filming that basically not too long ago. What what stage are you at now in kind of like putting everything together for release?
Yeah, we finally locked the edit, so we're not going to mess with the movie anymore.
Right.
It was a very long film. It was almost 3 hours long, and so you have to go down through the difficult process of what stays and what goes, and
Mhm.
the various cuts of the film, and yeah, getting it into shape. And but now it's there, it's locked, and so now we're working on color and sound, cleaning up the sound, the audio mix, and getting in the music to you know finish the film. But it's yeah, it's a big movie. So we're gonna hopefully start screening at festivals. Don't know which ones yet or when they'll
Mhm.
be, but in the coming year in 2024, and then it would be publicly available. We're aiming. I mean, it'll be a year away. We're aiming for November
Right.
of 2024 for a general release,
Oh
because we
my
want to get through the year with festival screenings. So we'll see how that pans out.
Oh wow. That sounds really exciting. So where's the best place for our listeners and myself to kind of keep an eye open for any festival events that you might be taking your film to, or any appearances? Like is your website the best place to look for stuff
Yeah,
like that?
Yeah, so my website is my production company, Hollinsworth Productions. There's no G. It's HOLLINSWORTH Productions, HollinsworthProductions.com. I also have a Facebook, Hollinsworth Productions, and I usually would post updates there. Um, but yeah, that's the best place to look to find all of my work and what's coming up.
Oh,
That's
nice.
there.
I did. I actually I took a peek at your website a little bit earlier this week, and I noticed all the different cool clips that you have on there. And there was, I think it was, I want to say it's a 19-minute video of a haunted building that is there in, I think it's in Venice. That was a good little video. Do you typically make things like that for people to watch?
The most haunted house at Venice Beach is what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah, no, that was I mean, it was the middle of the pandemic, and I was just getting stir crazy, and I there's this house in Venice that I sort of passed by, and um, it's a fascinating looking building, and it is empty, and I just kept again like thinking, and as I already mentioned, I do have a fascination with Los Angeles history and geography
Mhm.
and all that. So it became a little sort of a love letter to Venice Beach history and archival photography of Venice back in its glory days when Abbot Kinney founded it in 1905. And yeah, just so no, that was I don't normally do shorts. Um, Features is what I work in, but it was the
Right.
pandemic, and I was just like, I can't just sit here for another 6 months. So we did
No.
it, and it won the Rondo Award for Best Short Film the following year when it did come
Oh,
out. And,
wow.
so that was very nice, and it's actually that I might say that's maybe my favorite thing that I've done,
Uh-huh.
just because it's yeah, it's something I don't know, it's personal to me.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was really beautifully done.
Thank you.
The imagery and just the story to go with it. I really enjoyed that myself.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's all actual history of Venice. It really did look like that at once upon a time, and it really did. A lot of it did burn down or was destroyed over time, and so we still have little corners and nooks and crannies left in Venice Beach today that are of the original era. But the, the the way that it looked back then, with all of the larger canals and the beautiful architecture and stuff, is it's no longer there, and I think it's a great shame, and that's something that I wanted to get into with Todd Tarantula. Of the city constantly changes. The city, we have no respect for our history in LA. As fast as you can build a building, they'll knock it down to build a ugly mixed use condo building that's just a box, and there's no um, the beauty of old LA is not quite preserved. There's a couple buildings here and there, but
Right.
nobody cares, you know.
Oh, no, it was definitely lovely and I enjoyed watching it. Um, so as a filmmaker, is there a project that you would love to do in the future that has been on your mind that you definitely want to do, if you know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
of
Yeah,
course,
I know there's
and
probably
there's
tons.
several scripts that are sitting there. One of them, there's three that immediately spring. Well, no, I mean I've already thought of like five more. Um, the there's three that I'll kind of well, one of them might actually be happening sooner than
Oh, wow.
later, so I will refrain from discussing that. But
Okay.
it would be something that I wanted to make since I was a kid, so that could be amazing. But there's a script, Madame Le that I wrote, which is it's like a huge, big tribute to AIP, American International Pictures, drive-in films, like Count Yorga Vampire and the Crimson Cult and the Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe horror movies. As Madame Lasser, she's this psychic with a spectral boyfriend, Johnny Stoker, and they're on a road trip from a carnival where she tells fortunes and stuff back east to here to Venice because it's in 1971 when the story takes place. So it's a period piece. So already that's a lot of money right there. And she wants to have her own beach blanket bingo here on the beach because she's never really seen the beach. And it's a love story, really. It's a love story between this ghost and a psychic. And they're driving out here, and she has all these sort of supernatural acquaintances, and there's a killer on the road that they cross paths with, and it's something that could be so cool and so psychedelic, and I love that script, and but I mean, it's major money, but we'll figure that out eventually. And then another my end game, if you want to use that word, is Phantom of the Opera, and do it
wow.
like the novel and shoot it on location with IMAX cameras in 70 millimeter, and yeah, that's the goal. That's why I got into this whole unforgiving, brutal business when I was younger and ignorant, and but that would be great. So we'll see. I mean, that'll be more than a few years from now, hopefully. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Do you do to help with this? Like, do you do anything like the Kickstarters or anything that I've seen some other independent filmmakers do? Like, do you have something like that?
Yeah, I don't like those. I mean, I did it once with Todd
Hmm.
Tarantula 10 years ago, and it didn't work because Todd Tarantula, you've seen the film, you can tell it's not your normal. You can't put that in a box, and you can't just sum it all up in a sentence. It's a very crazy film, and Kickstarters and things like that. I've noticed those really work for niche projects, documentaries. Where
Okay.
you already have a built-in audience that wants to see the history of Hammer horror. If that, well, I guess no, there was one for Hammer horror films that did succeed actually, because I did contribute to it. But like something that's like very specific, and you really have to run a good campaign
Hmm.
on top of the film. And making a film is already, there's so much work and stress and moving pieces around it, than having to manage a campaign and perks and things, and then uh, you're giving out things about the film, information about the film before it's time for people to know. I subscribe to the Christopher Nolan method of like, you'll find out when the movie comes out, and until then you have to
Yes.
wait, kind of thing.
Right.
um, and it's our team. It's myself, Nathan Wilson, and Kelly Kitko. It's three people, and we also have a life on top of like trying to make movies. So trying to manage all that stuff is difficult, and yeah, I mean it works for some people, but it doesn't work for a narrative feature film. Saying,
Okay.
hey, we've got this movie that takes place in 1970, and all this stuff, contribute, $20, $50, $100, $150, $2,000, or such and such, and then not making your goal, and you've already given out so much production information. I don't
Right.
like that. So that's a long answer to a question, but
Yeah, no, I can definitely appreciate that because I mean, there's a lot of information that you don't want to give out, before the film comes out because that's
yeah,
part of sitting in the theater and watching it, right? Is
yeah,
the element of surprise.
right.
So there's another project that you've been doing. So you've been doing some writing. You've been writing essays like for a column. It's called Ansel's Asylum for the Psychotronic. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that? That looks so cool. And where can we find these writings?
Yeah, it's I'm published in We Belong Dead, which is a magazine out of the UK,
Mhm.
and that came about. I wrote an essay. A friend, he, I don't think they actually even maintain the site anymore. I'm not sure, but it was Universal Monster Universe, and he asked me to write an essay, a guest essay
Mhm.
about Claude Rains' Phantom of the Opera, and how that kickstarted my love of Universal monsters and filmmaking and all of that. So that was a couple years ago, and so they ran it on the site, and then Eric McNaughton, who started the magazine and is the publisher, read it and said, I would you mind if I published this in an upcoming issue of the magazine? And I was like, oh wow, that's cool, yeah, hell yeah. And so they did. When was that? That was, I feel like it was still, I don't know if the pandemic had begun or if it was just before, but
Mhm.
it was a while ago. And then I they they asked if I wanted to write another essay, so I wrote a thing about why I consider Bela Lugosi's character of Igor from Son of Frankenstein and The Ghost of Frankenstein to be a dyed-in-the-wool universal monster and not a sidekick, because these are the things that I ponder in life. And they published that, and then Sam Irvin, who's in The Great Nick D, and he's a good friend,
Mhm.
he said, because I also I I'll post about movies on occasion, and I have a very I have an Instagram, but it's not about like life or my filmmaking or anything.
Mhm.
It's kind of, it began as me showing off my movie collection, and then it sort of evolved into me writing about film history and film analysis. And he's like, you really, so I did this history of horror from 1931 to 1983, and talks about the different movies that came out, and how the shifting of the landscape of the horror film in those years. And he's like, you should really have this published, you should do something with this, and why don't you talk to Eric about doing a regular thing in the in the webs in the magazine. And I know Jeff Thompson, who was a guest on your show, also
Mhm.
said the same thing to me. So then I hit Eric up and I said, so what would you consider, is this something that you guys would be interested in? Everybody's telling me that I should do this. And he said, oh yeah, by all means, we think of a column title, and our next issue, the deadline is this date, and if you can get something in by then, yeah, let's begin. So yeah, it took me like a week or so to come up with Ansel's Asylum for the Psychotronic, but I think it's catchy. And
It
it's
is.
been running since the beginning of 2021. I think was when so now it's like on its 12th installment, I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, I do that, and it's uh, it's cool. It's like I don't know. Somebody called me a film historian the other day, and I was like, oh, okay, that sounds nice.
So where can we find these? Like, do we
They
find them
yeah
on?
they distribute them. I believe they're in. I might be wrong. I believe they do carry them in stores in the UK because it is a UK based magazine. But
Right.
they have a deal now where it's there's the website webelongdead.co.uk. I think
Okay.
We Belong Dead magazine. Definitely just Google that and the thing will come
Hmm.
up. But Amazon also distributes them globally, so you can you type up on Amazon We Belong Dead issue 36, issue 37, issue 30, and it should come up. and yeah, it's there. The latest issue just came out. It was for Halloween. It was a blaxploitation issue, and I wrote about the film Eve's Bayou from the
Right.
'90s. So yeah,
Oh, that's so cool. That's very cool. Well, I'll definitely have to look for those. So you being a movie buff, what do you like to pop onto your TV and just binge watch when you have a little bit of downtime to relax? Do you binge watch any kind of particular movies, or do you have like a go-to TV show that you really enjoy?
yeah, I do. My go-to television show uh, it's something that nobody would ever think. Bob's Burgers. I love that show. It's a cartoon, but
Yes.
it's like it's I don't want to call it it's an adult cartoon, but it is. It was it's not like The Simpsons, but because they're nicer and they're more of a family,
Right.
and they I mean, it's like I'm not an actor, but it's a bucket list item to voice a character on Bob's Burgers. I love that show. It's so funny. That's what, especially when I'm really depressed and frustrated and wondering what the hell am I doing with this ridiculous business. I'll watch that and I'll feel better. Um, what I've been watching, I I I mean, I'll watch kind of anything that jumps around. But this past year, especially because of Great Nick D,
Hmm.
I I decided it'd been a minute since I have a very extensive DVD and Blu-ray collection.
Right.
And it'd been a minute since I watched all like the classic musicals and comedies from MGM and RKO and Warner's of the 30s and 40s and 50s really. So really like a deep dive into like Turner Classic Movies, what they would normally show on TCM,
Right.
but on my DVD collection. And so I was trying to stick to comedies and musicals and romances to bring that similar feel good entertainment spirit to the great Nick D. And yeah, just so I was just watching all those um, and stayed away from the horror and stayed away from the noir because I'm making a feel good movie. So I did that this summer, and now because it's November, God, I'm just embarrassing myself, but I had to observe Noir Vember because it's film noir on November, and I'm watching a bunch of great noirs that I mean I've seen them all, but like it's the perfect opportunity to do it. It's it's the holiday season of noir, and so yeah, stuff like Kiss Me Deadly and Act of Violence. What's Crisscross, which I love. That's a great Los Angeles Bunker Hill noir.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I do that, and then yeah, I mean it's spur of the. I mean it really depends. Like I don't have a game plan, much as I like to think I do, and but then also a lot of the time is eaten up with dealing with the movie. So you know, trying
Yeah.
to finish editing or dealing with post production that we're dealing with. So yeah,
Oh, nice. No, I completely get it too, especially when things get really busy. It's always important to, take that time for yourself and, if you have something favorite that you enjoy to just kick back and binge watch, I think that's super. It's something you have to do for yourself for sure.
yeah, no, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I don't really watch much TV, you
Mm,
know, so yeah, movies. I mean, I was always like, as a kid, I was sitting in front of Turner Classic Movies when they first launched the channel back in the '90s. So these are, it's movies that I've always enjoyed, and yeah, it's it's fun. It's nostalgic, and they don't make great movies like they used to, and that's the big thing. So
no, exactly. Oh no, exactly. So let's kind of turn our focus back just a little bit to something that you appreciated a lot back in your childhood, as well as even today. It's your love for the dark shadows and the great connection that you had with cast members. So, Bruce, did you want to kick things off here?
Yeah, it really hit me hard when I heard about the passing of Lara Parker, and you mentioned her a few minutes back, Ansel. She, of course, worked on two of your Dr. Mabuse films. She's also in The Great Nick D. She passed away October 12th from cancer. She was 84. I really had no idea that she was even ill. First off, did you know how sick she was and that the situation was as serious as it was?
Yeah, I mean, it was yeah, within the inner circle. Yeah, we knew. I mean, it was it was what it was, and I mean, we'd known for a while, and but it was nobody's business, so obviously nobody said anything. Um,
Yeah.
and but she didn't like. How do I phrase it? Uh, she wasn't um, restricted by her illness. It was just like, well, this is a matter of fact, but I've got all these other things I'm going to deal with and have fun with, and um, so like when we came to do the her, when we came to film, she was having fun. She really loved what had been written for her, and was on point doing her job. Wanting to, are you sure that you're happy with the scene? Should we do it again? Should I do,
Mm.
the same questions like David Selby will ask, because they're actors. So nothing, there was no, um, where some people might, how do I say this tactfully? Where some people might start, planning for the end, or,
Mm-hmm.
or, again, I want to say this tactfully, making everybody else miserable. Like Laura was like still wickedly funny, and
Mm.
very sharp. They just went to her and her husband Jim went to Paris, and they were doing things, and she was working on her audio book of I believe it's The Heiress of Collinwood, and yeah, I mean, having fun with her grandson. There was no sense of morbidity, or you know the final curtain, or however you want to put it. Um, yeah, she was still Laura, and she was. I mean, Laura also, we did. She was in the short film of Madame Lesueur, which is the thing that I'd love to do as a full movie. And then we
Mm-hmm.
did the job interview with John Carlin, which was John Carlin's final thing several years
Mm.
back. And she was with the great Nick D. She's like, "Oh, I'm so happy that you're not having me spout gobbledygook, and I can be a human." And so she, just like all of her, her Laura isms, and
Yeah.
yeah, still so damn funny, and saying things I can't quite repeat. But like, you know, she was very down to earth, very uh in the same way that like David Sylvie is like a humanitarian. Laura was like an eternal student, and was always fascinated by people and their lives and their livelihood and why they are the way they are. And that probably comes from being an actress, and studying people, and observing things, and then
Yeah.
funneling that into the craft. But she was always just like curious about everything, and she was impressive. Like, oh, wow, I remember when we were in your garage and you didn't even have a microphone, and now look at all these people are working for you. And she was proud of that. And yeah, she was funny. She was very funny, and nobody realizes how funny she could be.
Yeah.
And just like insult
Mhm.
insult people with like a, a word, or even oh my god, we were at an event, and actually, I shouldn't repeat this one, but like somebody said something. A mutual friend that we all know, and she just looked at me and didn't do anything. She just gave me this look, and I was on the floor laughing hysterically, and then she's like cracking up because just like she was just funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like she was very determined. It's reminiscent of Carolyn Jones, who did such a great job as Morticia Addams on The Addams Family. And then Carolyn Jones came down, I believe it was with cancer in the early 1980s. She was working on a soap opera, and she was quite ill. And I don't think she completely let on just how sick she was, but she was determined to finish all the episodes that she was scheduled to work in. And it was the kind of determination that you really admire. With Lara, another aspect of her career that maybe we don't talk enough about was another horror film that she did in the early 70s. Of course, she was great as Angelique in the Dark Shadows TV show. She also played Angelique Collins in Night of Dark Shadows. She was great there. But then later in the 1970s, she was in Race with the Devil, a film about satanic worship. She was one of 4 key characters that were kind of evading the satanic worshipers. I thought she was very good in that too.
She had a lot of stories about that one.
Really?
I'm trying to think again, like which ones I can repeat because they were. Well, okay. Again, tactfully, a co-star in the film would refuse to do things, and Laura would be like, "Well, I'll do it," and she got herself more screen time, and she had a few colorful things to say about the actor. Or and also she was Jane Fonda's roommate in college. So then Peter Fonda's in the movie and producing the movie. But she said that and she'd met Peter Fonda. Well, she'd met Peter before he was Peter Fonda, and because Jane invited her back home for I want to say something like a holiday weekend or something. I don't remember exactly the circumstances, but Henry Fonda was there, and she said, Henry Fonda at one point asked her opinion on oh my God, was it like a character that he was going to do or something? And she was a student in college. She wasn't, anybody at that point. And she was amazed that, Henry Fonda is asking her thoughts on this. And so, but she said that, when they did the movie, Peter didn't have any recollection, or if he did, he wouldn't bring it up. It wasn't why she got cast in the film. But she had a lot of funny stories about a couple actors in that movie, and yeah,
I can imagine who they were because I know Warren Oates was a wild man. He was on that film. And I've read also that there was some tension between her and Loretta Swit, the famous actress from MASH. So that added to kind of some difficult times, but they ended up making a great movie nonetheless.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And she was proud of it. I remember, when we went to Comic-Con together, we drove down, and she's like, "You've seen Race with the Devil?" And we talked about that for a little bit, and that's when she was telling me some stories about a particular cast member. And I the one that really stands out the most in my mind is the scene with the snake, where there's the snake in the RV. And she goes, "Well, I'll do that scene if they don't want to do it, and I'll, I can do that." And so she became the victim of the scene versus the other player that was supposed to do it, because the other player was being a diva. And it's a good movie. It's been a little bit of time since I have seen it. I have the Blu-ray, and I was gonna rewatch it, and then I don't know. I will at some point, but it's a good downbeat 70s thriller.
Yeah, it's a great film. There's a lot of action, a great chase scene, and one of the most chilling conclusions in horror history. Great work by Lara Parker, the late Lara Parker, in Race with the Devil. Tracy, I believe you had one more question for Ansel before we let him go.
I do. So I wanted to touch base with you about a production that you did. It was the Dark Shadows Christmas Carol from 2021. That
Mm-hmm.
production actually won a 2021 Rondo Award for Best Event.
Yep,
Can
we did.
you tell us about that? What it was like making it, and how you felt about bringing the Dark Shadows cast back together again as kind of like a love letter to Dark Shadow fans?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was something that, I mean, Dan Curtis had said back in 2000, when they had the reunion at the Directors Guild. You know, he always wanted to do a Christmas Carol on the show, and like just like suspend the storyline of the main series for that moment, and just do a Christmas Carol, and just have the cast, play the parts, and they never did. And he goes, "That's my biggest, I wish that we'd done that." And around the time of the first or second Doctor Mabuza, I can't remember which, because they were like back to back. We were talking, oh, what if we finally did a Christmas Carol and did it as a film, and it various, it's like, okay, well, there's so many already, and we didn't do it, carried on, did other things, and then during 2021, so the pandemic was over. We had done the previous Halloween during the pandemic. We'd done like a Halloween reunion on Zoom, and that was chaos, but it went over well. So then immediately the idea was, oh, what if we finally do Christmas Carol and we'll do it on Zoom? But it took till the following year, because it was October, and December is right around the corner, and it was, okay, well, if we do it, we'll do it for next year. And then so the following year, we Richard Halpern and myself set about getting it together, and wrangling everybody to the start line of, okay, so this is what you're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and who you're going to play. And Mitch Ryan was very particular of like, I want what I have to say to be authentic Dickens. And so make sure that it was authentic Dickens, because what it was taken from was Orson Welles' production that they did, the Mercury Theater on radio,
nice.
Christmas Carol. So it was a version of that, but a little boiled down and a little more streamlined. So Mitch Ryan needed to make sure that it was that it was Dickens and not Wells that we were, that he would be speaking. And everybody is scattered everywhere. So we had half the cast is on the East Coast, half the cast is on the West Coast. David Hennessy is down in South America. Alexander Moltke had been involved since basically leaving the show. So how is everybody gonna fit to get who is everybody going to play, and how are they going to do this? And we're doing this on Zoom, and Zoom, the timing of it was the juggled times, and we all had to be on it, and we recorded it that first Saturday, and it took hours, and just Dark Shadows does not exist without chaos. I think it's just like a cosmic rule of, ever since that show began, no matter what is going on, no matter what iteration of the show or the movie or the reboot or the I'm going to talk about the 90s version or like what have you, Dark Shadows does not thrive nor exist without chaos. And we had all that it was like 1968, but virtually.
Oh.
Everybody's like just panic stricken. What are we gonna? Yes, and we have to stop, and all these things going on, and but we got through it. And then I had 3 days to edit it together and put all the vintage illustrations and cutaways, and put all the music and all the effects work and things that were going to happen. And then it broadcast that Saturday, and we all had to be on it because we would do the live Q&A afterward. And it was interesting also, because when we did it, we didn't have a Ghost of Christmas Future, so it was just David Selby as Scrooge, performing. But there's nothing for him to. Everybody's just sitting there, and I had done, I'd done my anthology series Theater Fantastique that Chris Pennick was sort of the lead player on, and there was footage. We did a Christmas episode, the Family Wolf Christmas, and so there's footage of Chris that's holiday themed, and he's wishing everyone Merry Christmas in the characters in the episode. And we also did a poem of Poe, which was this very cool amalgamation of various Poe stories and poems, as if Poe himself was experiencing them, and Chris played death in that. He said, he goes, how am I going to play death? And I'm like, I want you to do it like a sad Fellini clown. And, all right, I will bring all of it. So there's this footage of Chris in a death shroud, and he's doing things and stuff. So as I was cutting it, I'm like, we need to see the Ghost of Christmas Future, and how we're gonna. And then I'm like, oh, I have this footage of Chris, and it's Chris, and he's he deserves to be part of the show, because Chris had sadly passed, in February of 2021, and this is already December of 2021. So had he still been there, you damn well bet he'd have been part of it, and screaming and panicking, what am I going to play? And, all the Chris Pennick, all the energy and ferocity that was Chris Pennick. And so I was like, this is perfect. Like, he's there. He's already, so I took that footage of him from Poem of Poe, where he played Death, and masked out his face so we don't see who is the Ghost of Christmas Future until it's time to reveal that it is Chris Pennick. And it worked. It was like, oh, it was everybody's like, oh, they must have shot Chris Pennick, before he died. Well, no, we didn't have this planned. This was just happy accident miracle footage. So we put that all together, and then had Chris at the end wishing everyone Merry Christmas, and broadcasted it. And it's something I'm incredibly proud of. To have been part of it, to have witnessed it, all the chaos that went on behind the scenes of doing it. And as time goes on, and no one is getting any younger, I'm very proud that we have Mitch Ryan and Lara and Chris vicariously in this thing, and we got to fulfill that little gaping hole in Dark Shadows mythology of, well, what would a Dark Shadows Christmas Carol be like? Well, we did it, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm very happy that we won the Rondo. And as my nephew gets a little older and can understand what Christmas Carol is, and who are all these crazy people that his father and his uncle work with, I can show him this thing and be like, this is a Christmas Carol, and it's there now for all time, and it's hosted on my YouTube channel, Hollinsworth Productions. It's all there. It's on there, all year round, so you can watch it no matter when, if it's the 4th of July or if it is Christmas. And it's something that I'm very, very proud to have been part of, and I'm biased, but I do think it might be the best Christmas Carol. And it's faithful. It is very faithful to Dickens, because Mitch Ryan made sure that it was. So,
No, that's amazing.
Very well done, Ansel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I did check some of it out a little bit earlier this week, but I think next weekend I'm going to take the time and sit down and take a really good listen to it because, I've heard a couple people talking about it and they really enjoyed it. So, congratulations. That is a definite job well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Richard Halpern deserves the equal, credit to with along, me and him, we tag teamed on the whole thing, and it was it was a labor of love for everybody. I mean, even the cast themselves, they understood the importance of this, and so everybody wanted to do their best, and that's why there was chaos behind the scenes. But again, it's also dark shadows, so
Yeah.
it adds to the energy.
Our guest has been Ansel Faraj. He is an award-winning film director, screenwriter, and producer, and also writes the regular feature Ansel's Asylum for the Psychotronic, and that can be found at the UK publication called We Belong Dead. Ansel, thank you very much for your thoughts. This was, of course, our second interview with you. You were just as great here as with the first time. And we hope to have you on as we move closer to The Great Nick D and its debut. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Ansel.
much for having me. Thank you, guys.
We're going to take a short break. And in just a moment, Tracy and I will be back to give us thoughts on the new Netflix series produced by Mike Flanagan, The Fall of the House of Usher. The Ghostly Gallery podcast continues momentarily. We are back on the Ghostly Gallery podcast. Again, our thanks to director Ansel Faraj, such a thoughtful guy, telling us about the process of making his films. Always wonderful to hear from Ansel. We did want to talk, Tracy and I, about the Netflix series, the latest from Mike Flanagan, The Fall of the House of Usher. It debuted earlier in the fall, featuring 8 episodes. It's based primarily on the House of Usher, but also a number of other works of Edgar Allan Poe. Many of the characters carry the names of Poe characters. And as I think I'd mentioned a few weeks ago, Tracy, I was really kind of turned off by the first episode. The language was so coarse, so full of tough words, and the characters almost across the board were very, very unlikable. I didn't give up on the series, though. I wanted to watch it through to the end. And in fairness, I thought it did get significantly better as the series progressed. And I thought one of the real high points was the ending of the second episode called Mask of the Red Death. Remarkable conclusion to that episode. It's the masquerade party, which is put on by one of the Usher sons, Perry. I don't want to give away what happens for those who haven't seen it, but I was absolutely shocked. It was one of the more amazing finishes to a horror TV episode that I've ever seen. So I thought that was a real high point. Let me get some of your thoughts, Tracy, on the series. What'd you think?
I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. I honestly didn't know what to expect, but I'm a huge fan of Mike Flanagan's work. Um, this one was a little bit different, but I do agree. Like, you have to give it a little bit of time. But I'm one of those types of viewers that, especially with Mike Flanagan's work, that I will watch the 8 to 10 episodes, and then I will go back again and watch them over again to pick up everything I missed the first go around. And each time that I watch it, it just gets better and better. But his cast was wonderful. Like the reoccurring cast that he uses over and over again with his projects, they're so great. Like Carla, and I don't want to, her last name, is it Gugino? I'm just not quite sure how to pronounce it. But then you have his wife,
Gugino. I believe it's a hard
Gugino.
G. Yeah.
Oh,
Gugino.
perfect.
Yeah.
And his wife, Kate Segal, playing
Yeah.
Camille, just such beautiful characters. Like, I just love them all so much. And, you know, they might not have been the most likable characters in this particular series, but I think they did an excellent job, both the young versions and the old versions of the characters.
Yeah. I agree. There were some great performances in the series. Bruce Greenwood played the central character of Roderick Usher. I think he's a highly underrated actor. I remember first seeing him on St. Elsewhere back in the mid 1980s. And obviously, that's a long time ago, but he's grown as an actor. I think he's excellent. He's been in many Flanagan productions.
Mm-hmm.
Samantha Sloyan, who was so good as Bev, the detestable Bev in Midnight Mass.
Yes.
She was great in this series also. You mentioned Kate Siegel, who's always outstanding. The only thing I didn't like was that Siegel's character was, killed off relatively early.
Yeah.
Then there was Mark Hamill. And, you know, Mark Hamill is obviously iconic because of what he did in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's really grown as an actor. He was really good as the family lawyer, the ruthless Arthur Gordon Pym. And I almost didn't recognize him in terms of the way he looked, the way he spoke. But I thought he nailed the role. And then as far as Carla Gugino, I thought she was the best. She was great as this mysterious Verna who starts out as a bartender and then turns out to be somewhat of a supernatural character. And she's different in each episode, but also at the same time, you know that when she's about to appear, when she appears, something bad is going to happen to one of the Usher family members. And I thought she played the role to the hilt. Maybe the only likable character was C. August Dupin, who was a character featured in many of the Edgar Allan Poe books. And in this particular series, he's an attorney general played by Carl Lumley. He was probably the only guy that had any sense of morality at all. So I guess that did balance off some of the other sinister people. All in all, I thought the series was okay. It's not up to the standard of Midnight Mass or The Haunting of Hill
Mm-hmm.
House. I think I would put it on a par with The Haunting of Bly Manor. So maybe that second tier of Mike Flanagan productions. Decent, above average, certainly worth seeing, just not at the peak of what I expected from Mike Flanagan. Would you rate it a little bit higher than that?
No, I think I would probably rate it this in the same manner. Absolutely. And like I totally agree with you about Mark Hamill's role. I honestly did not recognize Mark at the very beginning. It took me a little bit of time to place him. But I want to give a little shout out to Mike Flanagan's use of some younger cast members like Ruth Codd and Kylie Curran and Igby Rigney, like some of those cast members that he had also used in Midnight Mass, as well as Kylie Curran, who played Lenore. She was also the little girl that played in Doctor Sleep, which I didn't realize until I did a little bit of research. But his use of the younger actors to give them a chance and take part in his visions, I just think is amazing. I give high praise to Mike Flanagan, and you know this series was pretty good, and I'm surprised it was only 8 episodes though. Usually they run about 10, so
Yeah.
that was a little bit different.
I did love all the references to Edgar Allan Poe. Of course, we talked to the great author Mark Dawidziak, who has the Poe biography that just came out this year, and it's doing really well. I think he's on to the 3rd printing with that. I like the fact that Flanagan was able to incorporate Poe references and parts of different Poe stories into this production. Also, another good ending was the ending to episode number 5, The Telltale Heart. That involved the gifted but troubled surgeon Victorine. I did not see the ending to that coming. So that in episode number 2 had some really scintillating conclusions. Very, very surprising. Certainly worth looking at. Not at the top of Mike Flanagan's library, but maybe 3rd or 4th. And there is some good stuff definitely to pick out. And that's an interesting point you make about going back and looking back at some of the episodes seeing some of the references that maybe you didn't see the first time around. That's always the sign of a good filmmaker or a television director as well.
Exactly.
Well, Tracy, thank you very much. Great job interviewing Ansel Faraj. We thank you for your contributions as always as our co-host and producer. We thank everybody for joining in, listening to this program, taking part in this macabre museum, this Museum of the Macabre. We hope we'll see you again next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.